Hey there, welcome back. Spread Nesson's Football Picks Podcast. Nesson.com's Mike Cole, joined once again, and as always, by Ricky Doyle, also of Nesson.com fame. Ricky, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Mike?
Not bad. Still getting a little situated here because I'm afraid I'm about to make a mess over here. So
yeah, I feel like our setup is a little different. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like we're kind of like more side by side than usual. My chair dropped like 3 inches right before we came on, so I'm kind of going up and down like a
sitting on a
game of whack-a-mole
phone book over there. Yeah, and I'm like just looking at the screen. The whole thing. Smarter people than I figure that out. We're just here to talk.
Yeah,
so we'll talk about week 2 of the NFL. We'll
time to overreact.
A little recap. Yeah, I think my overreaction is that we all pretend that we overreact to it more than
no, it's just we're going in circles.
Yeah, then it's just you'll sit there and be like, oh, well, I'm not overreacting, but am I overreacting to the overreact? And it's just I think that's anxiety in a nutshell, but that's neither here nor there either. How was your week 1 experience? Did you get a calzone?
I did get a calzone, actually. Yeah, this was one of the rare occasions where I actually followed through on my game plan. Buffalo chicken calzone, a little ranch on the side. But I think I told you this last week that where I usually get it from, they closed down a few months back, so I had to think outside the box a little bit. But yeah, calzone week 1.
I haven't had calzone in so long. I feel like it's time. So.
You know what? This place too. Like my one complaint is the pieces are too big. The way they cut it up. The previous place was very that's what I liked about it. It's just
the irony,
very shareable.
So it's a pizza.
No, this is just
Why did you just get a pizza then?
But no, this is like it's like 4 huge slices that are. The other place I used to go to was very
they should they should cut
sliced
these
up
things
in like eighths.
Cut these things into triangles.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like we could do like there's another slice to be had here with each of these slices.
I had a tough week 1. My picks were not great. At least they were good here. I went 2-1 here. My pick'em was a mess.
I had a great week. But I'm not on record on Nesson.com this past
those
week.
I don't know, yeah. But for the one I actually care about, I think I went 1-4. Also, Teddy Cole, our 3-year-old, has decided he is no longer doing the nap thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, you get to a certain point.
So we put him down at 1 o'clock usually. So I've been, for the last 3 years, I can get, the 1 o'clock games are pretty good. Now he's running around like a chicken with his head cut off at 1 o'clock too. So my takes are about to get a whole lot worse as my football consumption goes down. That's actually a friend of the program, Andre Kachaturian, was checking in with me to see how my sports viewing habits, viewing consumption has changed over the years. I think he might be getting ready to have a kid or something because that seemed like he was his biggest concern.
He was crowdsourcing to see like what's coming down the pike for me.
He's like his only concern seemed like watching sports, whether he can teach the baby Armenian. And if he'll have friends when he's 70. So it was a very
he seems to have it figured out on Sundays though. Like I see like he'll go for like a nice walk, he'll go get a nice coffee, and then he settles in for the 1 o'clock games.
We did
which has come a long way from when we were doing the show with them, and it was just a matter of whether he was going to get out of bed before the 4 o'clock games.
Yeah, we did apple picking on Sunday, so that's really just diving head first into fall.
I was gonna say you got out of the way early. It was great for apple picking.
There was nobody out there. It was awesome. I had such a good time.
Early adopter.
We were just all over. Yeah. So that might have
I still got eyes on the beach. I think you got another beach day in me.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, this weekend's supposed to be warm. So there's our weather talk. What do you want to overreact to in week 1 before we get into our week 2 picks?
I guess real quick, did you any thoughts on Tom Brady's broadcasting debut?
Again, that was like one of the ones where.
Or were you kind of in and out of that?
Yeah, I was in and out. I was trying to, from what I heard, he's got a weird voice.
So that was going to be my thing, right? So you want to go back to the Teddy Cole nap situation. Yeah. Like, I feel like that window there, if you're going to doze off on the couch, it's probably like the start of the 4 o'clock games. Once you get past the witching hour.
Exactly.
And, you're about 5 minutes into the first quarter of the 4 o'clock slate. And
especially
you're like,
as the season goes on, it gets darker.
Yeah. And I don't think his voice is going to be very conducive to naps this year. So that's one thing I'm going to have to adjust with.
It's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah. But I also, I don't know if I had a full read on it because I tend to go red zone on the main screen and then full game on the tablet. But I was like, this week's kind of weird. I want to see what Brady has to offer. So do I switch it up? But ultimately opted for him on the tablet. So I had only 1 air on it.
So I guess he got better as the game went on. The one noticeable thing was the dead air. And so I think he deserves the same week 1 grace that a lot of these teams that we'll talk about do, right? You can't overreact to 1 week, and some of the best broadcasters probably sucked at the beginning. My thing is like, this has been in the works for a while. How bad was he at the start of the training or whatever you want to call it, the practice? Like, if that's his, probably nervous too. Maybe you would think a guy of his ilk doesn't get nervous, but that's understandable. It's a somewhat unfamiliar situation, so I'm going to give him a little bit of time. But it wasn't good.
I think it's the flow thing too. It's like knowing when to get in and get out, knowing how much time you have to expound upon something. That's going to be the trickiest
You know what's
thing,
wild
right?
too? You're like, well, if you watch football all the time, you should have a pretty good understanding of it. That guy hasn't watched football in 25 years, probably.
Yeah,
it's just on film if he's watching it.
There was a lot of just like relying on the cliche sort of.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like can't turn the ball over, can't commit penalties. So
but it's funny because like I think
he's
back
so much
to
better in like interviews. It's weird.
So I was gonna say like there was that clip of him on Colin Cowherd,
though, is like,
and I was like wow, like, this is really good. But when you have 2 minutes to expound upon an answer or something.
I was just gonna say it's people who just wasted 2 minutes talking about my son's nap schedule and your calzone habits. Like, I can understand how you can get caught up with the time. Like,
you have time constraints. That's never been our strong suit. No. That's for sure.
So I get that. I guess if we're talking overreactions, I'm not overreacting yet. And I think part of the problem too is like I think he's got the Saints Cowboys this week. So that's a game that there's not a whole lot there for me to sink my teeth into. Same thing with the Browns.
Well-versed on the Cowboys.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they've the lead guy on Fox. You kind of have to be.
Right.
So that's tough. I'm curious to see what is it. Does he have the Patriots game coming up? They said week 5 is something that's been bandied about. So I think by that point, hopefully we're in a better spot. So actual football takes, anything stick out to you? We'll kind of get into stuff.
The Cowboys is a good one, considering their effort. I almost felt like, so obviously the news came down with the Dak Prescott contract extension, and then they just go out and dominate. And like I kind of even like looking back, how were they not favored in that game? Like I understand Cleveland's defense was really good last year,
but
not
a whole lot has changed year over year for either of those teams.
So this is what I'm getting at, right? With the Cowboys, I'm like, were we sleeping on them a little bit? And they used the collective we, because like the narrative around them was they didn't go out and make any really big moves to build on what they did last year. But I look back to last year, they were pretty good last year. Like there was a point last season where I thought they were the best team in football.
Yeah, they got pants in the playoffs, doesn't help, right?
It's very much like an optics thing, right?
And you hold them to a higher, it's kind of like the Yankees, right? Held to a higher standard, even though it's probably not deserved. I don't know if this is an overreaction, that division sucks so bad that we probably should have weighted that a little heavier too. Like they're going to win 10 games in their sleep. Yeah. Probably 12.
Half the division's trash. So
like very much so.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I want to overreact to a lot, but like the things I might overreact to coming out of week 1 were the things that I thought going into week 1, which I guess makes sense, but like getting too cute and thinking
like confirmation bias
to get it like the opposite, I guess. It's like thinking the Commanders might be halfway competitive. They get like whacked.
Yeah.
What else was there? Oh, getting the definition of getting too cute. Taking the points of the Panthers and being like, no, this is a good idea. I think the game's like 30
this week.
30 to nothing by the time we put away the apples. It was like, what's going on here? So stuff like that. You want to talk about confirmation bias? Like, do I feel better or worse about the Titans? I don't know. Like we were both on that one. That felt like it.
Oh, that midway through that Titans Bears game, I'm like, oof. Sharp as a tack, and then it just all unraveled from there. But
that was tough. And then I'm trying to think. I mean, not a whole lot else to get into. I guess we can kind of just as we go. I feel like we've probably sputtered along unless you have something else.
I will say though, I feel like the way the season opened with the Chiefs Ravens. I don't know. I think I kind of manifested that whole back of the end zone foot thing. It was just last week I was talking about stretching, and I said I had a little bit of a toe issue. So I knew there was something going on in my toe that was like, this is... And the first game gets decided by a toe. So I'd like to think that was my calling to like, hey, you got to factor this in here. This is going to come down to a toe.
I ran a 10K on Saturday.
Man.
In the...
10K apple picking?
In the hills of Carlisle. It was like a
trail
run.
Calzones.
You ever do trail running?
No.
You got to stretch. Did not stretch.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you.
Just hills and rocks, people eating it left and right. I came close. The proudest thing I've done in a while. I did not fall. And you're running on you're jumping on roots and sticks and rocks. But again, I was reminded of the importance of stretching. It's like, oh man, cramping up at the end there.
If I'm stretching to get on the treadmill at Planet Fitness, you better believe that I'm busting out some bands to get ready for a trail run.
It's tough. I gotta
mats and such.
Tie this all together. I have a half marathon in a couple of weeks. That's gonna be a calzone day, I think, for me. I think I'm coming out of calzone retirement.
The Mike Cole cheat day.
Yeah, buddy. All right, what's your 3-unit pick?
All right, so I'm gonna get really uncomfortable this week because I got some bad teams that I'm gonna end up backing. Starting with the Broncos at home, catching 3 points against the Steelers. This is more so a fade of Pittsburgh's offense.
I love this as like a zag play after week 1. This is the opposite of an overreaction.
Pittsburgh's offense, low on it coming into the year. They did nothing in week 1 to really dispel the notion that it's not very good. Didn't score a single offensive touchdown at Atlanta. Averaged 4.1 yards per play. Basically, that game came down to Atlanta turning the ball over, right? The 2 picks, a fumble. And I think that's to be expected. You're starting from scratch with a new quarterback, which has kind of been up in the air here over the first couple of weeks. It sounds like it's going to be Justin Fields again, but I don't think that really matters here. New offensive coordinator with Arthur Smith in there, dearth of playmakers. Now in this particular matchup, you're heading to the high altitude of Denver, for the second of back-to-back road games, and you're laying points. Like that makes me very uncomfortable. And I know that Denver's offense is no great shakes either. Like
they didn't throw the ball over the 10 yards like all but once or twice.
It's so like my overall impressions of Bo Nix. Like I think he'd be okay in the right situation. I just
think he's exactly what I thought he was.
I don't think he's terrible, but I also think that they don't really have anybody for him to distribute the ball to. So it's like. It's just kind of a whatever
Sean
offense.
Payton is going to end up getting so much more time than he deserves just because he's Sean Payton. It's like you got to. He was like, "Well, what do you want? I got the quarterback now. I got to go out and build guys who can catch the ball 6 yards from the line of scrimmage and take it 80 yards to the house." I don't know. It's going to take some time, guys.
Yeah, I do wonder, Bo Nix, how would he fare with the Bears, for example? Like, you know what I mean? I think with Caleb Williams from this past week was he's just kind of all over the place, right? Like he is
reining it in a little bit.
Exactly. Where I feel like that's sort of where Bo Nix is maybe his strength. Is it might just be from a pure experience and college standpoint, but
system.
Anyways, so Denver again, offense not great, but this is more a fate of Pittsburgh and in their offense and what they didn't do in week 1, which I don't think they're going to do very much of this year. It's hard for me to get to a point with the Steelers where they might be very good defensively again this year, but if you're asking me to lay 3 points on the road in Denver, I'm all set.
It is an interesting spot too, though. If they win, they could still win, and you get home with this +3. They'd be 2-0. All of a sudden, all this talk about regression and this will be the year that they fall. It's like, oh yeah, that's how they do it. They go and win games.
Yeah. Here's the other thing,
they have
right?
No business winning.
It's like the AFC North. I feel like has gained a reputation in recent years for being one of the best divisions in the NFL. Just hard fought every year. Maybe
it's just because everybody's mediocre
right now. I think Baltimore's probably going to be legit despite the week 1 loss, but obvious issues with Cleveland.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, like we said, I'm not sold on them for the long run. And Cincinnati couldn't have looked any worse in week 1. So who knows with that division?
My 3-unit play, I think the Patriots are going to get their asses whooped this week.
Speaking of the Bengals, lead right into that.
It was they're 3-point underdogs at home against Seattle. I will lay the points with Seattle. This might be up to 3.5 now. I locked it in at 3 like a sneaky little boy. But speaking of sneaky, I think the Patriots, I don't want to totally discredit what they did last week because nobody expected them to win. They came out, I expected Ramondre Stevenson to have a great game and for them to be competitive, and that's exactly what happened. So maybe I'm the Patriots whisperer.
Yeah. Thank God somebody needs to be.
Thank you. So I don't want to take away from the fact that they won a game. That's impressive. They were buttoned up. They played responsibly. They took advantage of what the Bengals gave them, and then the Bengals were in a tough spot too with some injuries and weird contract stuff. Whatever. Go back and watch that game. This was all like in a relatively short period of time. You get the Gesicki dropped the touchdown, which was, again, it was just tough play, but if that's a touchdown, it completely changes thing. It was a play or two later, Tanner Hudson fumbles at the 2-yard line. So, like, they should have scored a touchdown at some point on that drive.
Yep.
2 of them wiped off the board. Geno Stone dropped an interception on, I think, one of the ensuing drives in the end zone, so that would have taken points off the board. The Patriots ended up kicking a field goal. Charlie Jones fumbled on a punt return. The Patriots recover that down by the red zone. They had the 4th and 2 stopped, which was just a great play by the Patriots, but still, like, you run a little bit better play. They've what else was it? The tight ends, it's just, nobody played really well.
Did anything look or feel different about them?
No, and but just even that. So for as bad as they played, if one of those things gets flipped, this could be an entirely different game. And I know ifs, buts, candies, nuts, et cetera, but there was some fluky stuff going on that all went the Patriots' way. I think I saw a stat. The Bengals lost 2 fumbles all season last year. They lost 2 fumbles in week 1 this year. So
get them out of the way.
Yeah, I guess regressing to the mean. The other thing, bigger issue. Patriots offensive line, a lot of credit for not looking like a complete dumpster fire. You dive into the numbers a little bit more, doesn't paint the rosiest of pictures. Their pressure rate allowed last week was 44.8%. That's a pretty high number. It's basically 1 out of every 2 snaps. That's 31st in the league. Their yards before contact per carry, negative. So they were getting hit in the backfield on a continuous basis, last in the league. To that point, let's see. I think Greg Bedard's Boston Sports Journal had this. Ramondre Stevenson ranked 36. Antonio Gibson ranked 38th in yards before contact. Yards per contact after rush, or yards after contact per rush, they ranked 3rd and 14th, respectively. So a lot of that was credit to them. They did a nice job making guys miss tackles, et cetera, et cetera. People were in the backfield all day.
Yeah.
Pass block win rate, 72.4%, 25th in the league. The Bengals only blitzed 6 times. Without knowing for sure, I got to imagine a handful of those were late in the game when they were trying to stop the run too. So they didn't have to bring guys a ton. I don't feel great about their ability to consistently block week to week. They had Seattle had the 3rd highest pressure rate last week. Basically on the same blitz rate as the Bengals. I think they can get home. I also, digging in more to the Seattle offense, like, they didn't do a great job of protecting either, but I think they might be better equipped right now than the Bengals were. Like, they almost have a poor man's version, but this poor man's getting a little savvy. He's getting a little richer with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. That's kind of like a Chase Higgins thing, and Higgins didn't even play last week. So now you get that. Kenneth Walker is much better than, you talk about week 1 difference makers.
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, Jackson Smith and Jigba. You talk about week 1 difference makers like Joe Mixon looks like a Hall of Famer. Take that out of the Cincinnati. So I just think Kenneth Walker's playmaker. They've got some players
He's good.
there.
So
yeah. I don't think the defense for the Patriots is going to look as dominant as it did this week. I don't think they're going to get as lucky as they did last week. And I do think the pass rush is going to be an issue, or their inability to block is going to be an issue. So I think, like I said, I think this is like a 10-point game, but even just laying the 3, I feel comfortable. I know that's a weird spot coming across the country for a 1 o'clock game. Throw that out. I don't care here. I think the Seahawks roll here.
Yeah, that stat about the contact in the backfield is like that's a hard way to win. It's like sustain wins throughout the course of the season.
Week.
Like, no wonder a guy like Ramondre Stevenson wears down by week 10 or whatever. Like, if you're just consistently getting pummeled like that.
The numbers,
but
minus 0.06. Like, it's just
in the
backfield.
Look, nothing about that game felt any different than last year, right? Like,
not really.
I felt like I was watching the Patriots of the past few seasons, and then, like, I didn't expect it to look any different, really. But, like,
Jacoby
I guess
Brissett,
the one thing is they closed.
Yes, true. And Jacoby Brissett made some throws. He also missed a lot too. Going back and watching it, he missed some guys.
He used his legs a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to have as much wiggle room, for lack of a better term here. So,
yeah, the one concern I think is the offensive line of Seattle. Like, I could see a scenario where the Patriots win a very similar game.
Josh Uche,
the way they get in there. Geno Smith pressured on 47% of his dropbacks last week. I don't know. Maybe that's the path to victory for the Patriots. Tough week for survivor pool players, though, huh?
Yeah, I didn't do Survivor this year, and I'm glad because I probably would have just burned the Bengals.
It was like 34% of the participants in the Circa Survivor pool took the Bengals.
I mean, why not? Because it was either them or like I wouldn't have felt comfortable taking the Saints, even though they ended up winning, you know what I mean, by 30. So
God no.
Which team did you play?
So speaking of the Saints, the team they just waxed, Carolina, and I said at the beginning, I'm gonna get very uncomfortable.
I love this
week.
one though.
Get very uncomfortable. So I'm taking Carolina at home, getting 6 points against the Chargers. And again, like this is kind of similar to my 3-unit pick, where like I can't lay 6.5 points at the Chargers on the road, especially when you look at the Chargers were 3.5 point favorites on the look ahead. So we're talking about a 3-point jump here. Much like the Broncos, like nothing Carolina did offensively instilled any confidence in me, and I think that long term, I continue to have serious questions about Bryce Young. I think he's just too small. Like that, like this comes down to.
He also he could be bad. Like,
he's just bad, but he doesn't step into his throws. Like he's just kind of like floating it over like these offensive linemen that are 6 inches taller than him. But
a bad trade.
It is. It's tough. But if anybody should be able to fix that, it should be Dave Canales, right? You worked with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's a relatively small in stature.
Yeah. I was high on Dave. I'm just wearing it right now.
Yeah. This is a total just hold your nose and take the points game.
What do we think of the Chargers?
I thought that game was an absolute snooze fest.
Yeah, again, seeing the board pretty well. That went exactly how I went.
That was
one team just completely disjointed offensively. The other team just being like, we were more than
content. You want to talk about
nap
nap games?
Yeah.
I was fading fast
we
for that
were
one.
More than content to just sit here and run the ball 1,000 times. So, yeah, and I think that plays into it this week. The Chargers, it might take some time for them to get up to full Voltron, and I don't even know what that means for a Jim Harbaugh team either. Like, again, we talked about last week, they ran the ball with a pro-style or pro-ready quarterback on their roster last year at Michigan. I don't think there's going to be a huge difference this year. They looked far more responsible, and they were buttoned up. They were a professional outfit, but
that in and of itself makes them a better team than they have been in a long time, right?
Yeah.
So I think the results overall this season are going to be better for reasons like that. It's just not going to look good on a week-to-week basis. So and now you want me to lay 6.5 on the road with a team that plays like that? Like that, that's a big ask.
They like whatever the opposite of explosiveness is. That's pretty much how I would describe Jim Harbaugh, and I think his team kind of takes on that.
Which is so wild for a team that has that quarterback too.
Yeah,
where where all it is just like the
maybe
traits
it's the best
are there
for him in the long run. I don't know.
It could. It could be. Yeah. But I do think with a lot of these other teams that we mentioned and bringing in new quarterbacks and in new offensive coordinators getting up to speed, he's dealing with a whole new set of weapons.
Yeah.
So he's still getting on the same page with those guys. So I think that could be a multi-week thing. Maybe the offense struggles a little bit this week as well.
Those are two very sharp picks for you. Speaking of Harbaugh,
but again, you don't feel great anytime you take the Broncos and the Panthers. But that's what we are in week 2.
Scared money don't make money. I'm going with the squarest of picks here. Speaking of one of the Harbaughs,
it's all about balance.
I'm going with the other Harbaugh, John Harbaugh's Ravens. I'm taking them as 9.5-point home favorites against the Las Vegas Raiders. Nothing changed in how I regard the Raiders week over week. They are very, very untalented, especially on the offensive side of the ball, which is pretty impressive when you have Devontae Adams on your team. For that he can't even raise that floor is wildly impressive. I also this is a super, super simpleton take. Heavy rest advantage here for Baltimore, who played on Thursday night. They had the whole weekend off. They're at home against a team that's got to travel 2 weeks in a row, a team that probably already is kind of looking around I don't know how good we are. I've already seen some things about guys helping up other guys, or whether there's a commitment level issue for certain players on the Raiders. Now you got to go out for the home opener in Baltimore. A place is going to be rocking. I think that Ravens-Chiefs game feels like it was 6 months ago now.
It does.
So it's easy to forget that they were competitive. I mean, that game was not necessarily a blowout. They had a chance to literally a toenail. Yep. Kept them from putting
Lamar
that game in the overtime. Lamar looked good. I think Derrick Henry looked pretty good in very limited use, or not limited use, but I think game script really dictated what they could do offensively. They were playing catch up, especially in the second half there. I think you get to run downhill here. I'm probably leaning a little too heavy on this narrative about the Ravens that has been there in years past where they just beat the piss out of bad teams. I just think this is the perfect spot for that to happen. I look at 9.5 and it's like, yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it's square. But like, again, we've talked about this a ton. 27-13 doesn't feel like an absolute gong show.
I mean,
like they could easily do something like that. And if they get to 27, how do the Raiders cover? Unless Baltimore just looks trash defensively. So I just don't think that happens.
I think Baltimore probably not as good. At least on paper, they're not as good as they were last year. But like you said, we've seen in the past couple of seasons, especially like teams blow other teams out. Like there's a clear divide between the elite teams and the piss poor teams. So like we see with the 49ers, we saw it with a lot last year where they were just blowing teams out left and right. And I already kind of saw that in week 1 with the game against the Jets. Like I don't think the Jets are in the bottom of the league, but there's a clear talent gap between those two teams right now.
Not to mention like the Ravens are 0-1. I mean,
gotta come back.
Yeah, the season isn't decided in week 2, but you can't fall 0-2, especially with the Raiders loss. So I think they get right in a big way. I also talking about head coach mismatches. This one's up there for week 2. John Harbaugh against Antonio Pierce. Like I think Antonio Pierce has 1 win. Is that right? Since he's taken over, like it was a very.
No, they had that they blew out the Chargers. They had that 60. They scored 60 something
63
points.
21 or whatever.
I think they played well with him. Like
I guess
there was a newfound energy, but it never felt like this is at the cutting edge of something we're going to carry into next season.
That's the thing. Like, how is this thing going to age?
Like I don't like last season. It just felt very much like you got to consider where they were at too.
Yeah.
Like you go from Josh McDaniels to anyone.
Yeah.
Like that situation could not have been any worse. So that's just addition by subtraction. I don't even think it mattered that it was Antonio Pierce. Not to like discredit anything that the team did under him last year, but
they're 5.
I think a lot of coaches probably could have got that effort level after getting rid of what you had in there.
5-4. What was I thinking? Did they?
Yeah, they were fine.
Yeah, I get, but like you go back and.
But it was 5-4, and it like
they beat the Chargers. Oh, they beat the Chiefs in Kansas City. Was that Christmas Day? That was Christmas Day, right? Yeah, in Denver. So I don't know, man. Like it doesn't feel like what that team needs right now is a defensive-minded head coach, and I just think like. This could be we need to do over in 2 years from now.
Yeah, they're kind of stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
Right? At best. Like I don't know, it's tough to figure out what the direction is there.
I'm not buying. I think the Raiders are a team that I'm like I could see them going 3-14 this year and being pretty clearly the worst team in the league, if not for maybe Carolina. So what's your 1 unit play?
All right, 1 unit.
This was almost one of mine, by the way.
I'm gonna look at a total team that's near and dear to your heart. Who we haven't even really touched on that whole situation from Friday night. So the Colts traveling to Green Bay to face the Packers. I'm going to take under 40.5. Obviously, the Packers dealing with a quarterback situation with Jordan Love out.
Maybe.
LaFleur
left the door open.
Yeah.
Probably not going to play, though.
Yeah, I would find it. I would be very shocked if he was in there.
Malik Willis time, yeah.
But by and large, good news. Like when he went down, it was.
There's nothing worse than I don't mean I'm sorry, but like I went to bed being like my football season might be over, and it's September 5th or whatever it was. Like this sucks,
there was a 2-minute stretch there where I went from his season's done, and by extension, the Packers' Super Bowl hopes are done, to he's fine. He might not even miss any time because like. After he finally got up, like sure, there was he was limping around.
Yeah.
But I'm like, he's fine for next week. And now we just kind of met in the middle. So
it was a bad spot too. Oh, this is the other thing. Going back to my weekend, I literally I don't feel proud about this. Literally, on more than one occasion during my run, like through the woods, I pulled out my phone and was checking to see if there were any updates on Jordan Love. So the fact that they had to go do that on Friday night in Brazil and like they really couldn't get a good answer until like 24 hours later is not a good sign for the future of the Brazil game.
Depressing flights.
Ugh.
Like you hear about all the time in sports, like if you're on a road trip in baseball or something, and it's like coming back from Brazil to Green Bay is what, like
it's 11
10
hours,
and a half,
yeah.
11 hours. Yeah. That, just losing a game, just losing your starting quarterback. Ugh.
One time I flew back from Vegas extremely hungover, like a 7 a.m. flight. It's just like the anxiety I had for the entire cross-country flight. This has to be
Nashville, and I was a middle seat.
Oh,
dude, I was sweating buckets.
So like this guy doesn't know if his season's done. Just like his mind must have been racing. Anyway, 40 and a half is the number.
40 and a half, yeah. So I mean, all right. So obviously, the most important factor in this whole thing is the quarterback situation for Green Bay. If Malik Willis, it sounds like, is getting the start. Nothing he did in Tennessee impressed me.
Right.
That offense was non-existent anytime he was in there. I mentioned the travel factor. Like, you get the extra 2 days having played on Friday night, but like that's mitigated by the 11-hour flight or whatever it is. So, got to factor that in. Also, it's like, this is why I don't like that travel in week one. Like, these guys are still getting their legs under them. I think you saw that in a lot of games this past weekend, where towards the end of games, defenses look gassed. Anyways, so there's all of that. I also just think Indy's offense, I'm not sure they're going to be able to sustain the pace they had in week one. I mean, they had
that one touchdown was sick.
The Anthony Richardson off his back foot. That was sorry. So I think
that, but like that's what I remember from that game. So it's like
there's traveled 65 air yards, which is the third longest throw that they've tracked in the Next Gen Stats database, which goes back to 2016. But like the other two were running into it, Hail Marys. This was like off his back foot. Insane. But also insane. Averaged 23.6 yards per completion. Like, gotta think that's not gonna happen again this week. Average 7 yards per play. That's probably gonna come down. So I just expect fewer explosive pass plays from them. Probably more ball control tempo. Lead into Jonathan Taylor. They get like 16 carries in week one. So I just think the pace is going to be a little bit slower for this one. Coupled with, the Packers could bottom out offensively. 40 and a half, that in today's NFL, when you're talking about, like backup quarterbacks and things of that nature, that's not low enough to turn me off. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think you look at Joe Mixon ran all over Indy last week. I think the Packers try to do the same thing with Josh Jacobs this week. I think he gets 30, 35 carries. That clock, just running clock. Like, let's just keep it moving.
I think Green Bay's defense is going to step up a little bit this week, too.
I was talking to a couple of people out in the newsroom earlier. They were asking me what I thought of it. And, like, it didn't look great. And the numbers are very bad, actually, like especially the advanced stuff. I never felt the same way that I did watching Joe Barry's defense last year at any point during that game. It was frustrating, obviously, when they couldn't get stops, but you're playing a very talented offense. You're playing on a field that nobody can get their footing on. You're playing week one of a new guy's system. Like, get them home against a less talented team. I think they're going to look a little better. If not, then it's time to panic. But you got to think a little bit of course correction, and that if that's the case, then you're now playing a slugfest.
What do you make of the fact that they are turning to somebody like Malik Willis and not having a viable backup like some other teams? Like, should they have done more in maybe the offseason? Like, I know this is an injury that you can't really account for. It's not like it was very fluky in nature, but like, do you think that Green Bay should have had a better contingency plan or should go out and get somebody?
On the first one, yeah, probably, because they traded for him like at the end of camp, so it's not a guy that they had in their building the entire training camp. I think for the latter, you want a major flip or spin zone. Like, I think it's a good thing that they didn't go out and get. I would have loved to see him get Tannehill just because he's got that. I don't think he actually ever played with LaFleur but like it's the same system. The fact that they didn't go out and do that tells me that they aren't overly concerned about Love. So I think that points to Love probably returning sooner than maybe people think. They didn't put him on IR. Yep. So I think you look at their schedule too. They play Indy this week. I think they've got Minnesota coming up. Tennessee is in there. Some winnable games, like just
weather the storm
2-2 and get out. I don't know if they can do that with Malik Willis, but you're gonna have to win a couple ugly games here. But even if they're 1-3, that's not the end of their season. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a good point. How they've handled this entire situation speaks more about Jordan Love's status probably than how they feel about Malik Willis or their quarterback room in general.
And I also think too they're a relatively good team. I think they're good. They're well coached. Those types of teams usually perform really well their first week with a backup because it's just the floor is so high. So we'll see. I don't know. My what are we on?
1 unit.
1 unit, sorry. I'm taking the under in the Jets-Titans game. The total is 42. I guess I'm buying both of these defenses. For Tennessee specifically, we talked about this. They completely dominated defensively last week. They held Chicago to 2.8 yards per play. That's 32nd in the league. 25th in EPA per play. The Bears offense was. Chicago scored a punt return, an interception return, or a punt block, return, an interception return. They had 3 field goals, including 2 of 48 yards or more. That tells me they didn't really move the ball down the field at all. They only got in the red zone once. Tennessee's offense isn't great either, so that points to an under as well. They averaged 4 yards per play. That was 27th. They were 25th in EPA per play. I think we were talking about, I was trying to do some running back stuff earlier. The Jets defense certainly didn't impress, but I mean, this is a different universe going from playing the Niners to playing the Titans, playing Will Levis as opposed to what Brock Purdy has done in that system. I like what the Titans have for weapons. I don't think it necessarily matches up to what the 49ers did. I think you go back and look at that game, the Niners ran all over the Jets. The run defense was a major issue. I don't know if the Titans run game is going to be as strong as the Niners were, so I think the Jets defense should look a little bit better. It is a weird schedule spot for the Jets, though. 2 straight road games. They also have a Thursday night game lingering, so I do wonder how good they'll look on either side of the ball, but especially offensively. You look at the offense, too. Like, Rodgers showed signs of it last week, that it's still there, which was kind of cool to see. Also showed a lot of the stuff that we saw late in the year in his final season in Green Bay. We're still not entirely sure what he's going to do offensively.
That free play touchdown is like classic Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, so like, I don't want to discredit it, but it was a free play at the end of the day.
No, that was like the good Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Like the wherewithal to snap it and go for that,
which is a credit to him. But you also can't bank on that week to week. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is this is a 2013 game, and it's what probably the Jets win and just survive to get home at this point.
The one thing about the Jets is like they got to put a little more pressure on the quarterback. Like I think that again, like you're playing the 49ers, there's you're facing an offense that tends to Brock Purdy's going to get the ball out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't think that the opportunity was necessarily there like it might be against a team like Tennessee, but that's something that as you start to figure out like how good is this Jets defense? Is it as good as it was last year? Is it better than last year? That's something with the Hassan Reddick holdout. Like obviously that was playing a factor. So gotta get a hand in somebody's face there.
Just trying to find this number. There's like this crazy stat about just how down bad we were with that Titans game, where it's like they're the only underdog of like 4 points or more who led a game by 17 points at one point and still lost the game outright. It's really impressive.
I mean, even when it was before the pick six, you're like, this is it would take a pick six in order for this to go sideways, and that's what you got. So,
I guess we've got some bonus content.
Yeah, hell yeah.
We've tried to shy away from the primetime games from time to time, but moving forward, we're going to test out this new segment where we kind of look at the primetime games, at least this Sunday and Monday. It's a little tougher for us to do Thursday with the way our schedule works out. But I guess we're going to just dive into starting with Sunday night. We've got the Chicago Bears going to Houston to take on the Texans. Texans 6.5-point favorites, over under set at 45.5. I guess we got to start with Caleb Williams. What did you think of him and his NFL debut? And is that something that you want to overreact to after 1 week? Because it sure didn't look good.
No, it was everything that we feared, and I say we, I mean Bears fans. Like,
you're a Bears fan.
Yeah. Like it was everything that you pointed to. Like this, if this season goes sideways for Chicago, it's going to be for this reason. Like if Caleb Williams is not what he was made out to be in the preseason, it's going to be because he's relying on this Gerard up in the sand sort of style of football and a lack of control, and you get the splash plays, but you also get a lot of the bad as well. So I think they're gonna have to protect him from himself more or less in order for this offense to find its stride early on. Like I do think there will come a point where you sort of start to, you start to realize the speed at which this game goes in the NFL and the closing speed of cornerbacks and linebackers in coverage and things like that. But until that gets rectified, like I don't know if that gets solved in 1 week. So you're all of a sudden you're going on the road to face a team that looks pretty good in Houston. Like that offense looks legit, weapons across the board. So, right, just in general, I feel like I'm going to lay the points in this situation. But your Caleb Williams question, just not great in week 1. I think it gets solved, but I don't think it happens week over week.
I thought he looked like a boy amongst men, honestly, and maybe even more so than I thought. I was kind of down on him going into week 1, where I thought, the numbers were great at USC, but he didn't play anybody really worth a damn. Now, my one holdback from really declaring the Titans a great defense is the fact that they were going up against a rookie quarterback who looked every bit the rookie quarterback we expected. He was missing throws that were wide open down the sideline. And I think the more troubling thing, and you kind of hit on this, was him running 10 yards back. It's like a guy playing Madden on all Madden for the first time being
try to run all the way around and just you beat him on the edge.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, this isn't Michael Vick in 2004.
You're going to run 74 yards just to get 2 yards over the line of scrimmage. So there was that. And to your point, that's where the speed comes in. Like, linebackers will catch you. Like, defensive linemen will catch you. And that's something he's got to learn. I don't think he learns it going to Houston on a Sunday night. First road game of his career. Also, Keenan Allen's already banged up. Rome Odunze's banged up. I think this is a tough lesson for the rookie to learn here. Come back to earth. I would probably lay the points, too. Don't feel great about it. I think it probably goes under because I just don't know whether that Bears offense is going to generate a ton here. This is a work in progress. We can't overreact, but I thought Jaden Daniels was better than Caleb Williams was in week 1, and so I don't think that travels well either.
Yeah, look, in the questions about Caleb Williams as well, in addition to how is his style going to adapt to the NFL, is like the mental side of it. Like we've seen, like the go back to him crying in the stands or whatever. Like there is the extra layer of like how is he going to adjust, learn the game? Like is it how does that impact him off the field as well in terms of preparation and things like that?
If he learns those lessons quick, though, it's going to show up real fast because he has so many God-given abilities. Like, it's just kind of harnessing him and putting him in a spot that makes sense. Like, the Harbaugh thing with Herbert, like, doesn't need it necessarily, but somebody reining him in like that will go a long way and just putting him in a position where he can take advantage of his skills.
So they got the at Indianapolis next week, and then they have the Rams at home, the Panthers at home. They have an international game against the Jaguars, a bye week, and then they have Washington, Arizona, New England. So, there's a stretch in the middle of the season where I think he gets right. I just don't think it happens this week, and I don't think it happens next week.
It's a long season.
Sure is.
Monday Night Football. Got the Atlanta Falcons coming off their week 1 loss. They go to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Eagles 6.5-point favorites. Total set at 47.5. Where do you want to start here? Do we talk about how concerned we are about the Falcons, or we talk about the Eagles coming home after an impressive win?
Let's start with the Falcons because everybody kind of had them as the NFC South champs by default.
Mike Lombardi ripped them apart as the Super Bowl champs came back to earth in week 1. I don't think we were necessarily on that.
No, we were trying to find reasons to fade the Falcons.
That's
really,
right.
And if we had them going to the playoffs or anything like that, it was because the rest of that division stinks, which I still feel pretty confident in.
I agree.
And I do think offensively they will improve. Like they were, Atlanta and Pittsburgh, the under was one of my picks last week. It is because new quarterback, new offensive coordinator. It's also a quarterback coming back from an injury. So Kirk Cousins looked very skittish. He looked like a guy who was coming off an Achilles injury. I think that, I think he gains a little more confidence over time and starts to drive the ball downfield a little bit more. Philly returning home from Brazil, another long flight, like we said with Green Bay. Defense already showed cracks, so maybe I look at the total here and maybe go over. I don't know. I think I'm inclined to take the points with Atlanta in this game, thinking that it'll look a little bit better offensively. But interesting first week for both teams.
I would lean towards #take the points too, because this is one of those things where you look at the schedule, week 1 to week 2. Everything points to an Eagles route here, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just one team looked like death. The other team is survived an international trip, feels good about itself, comes home. Saquon Barkley looks like an entirely new player. I mean, this, you want to talk about video games, like that looks like, Terrell Davis on NFL Game Day 98 at a certain point. There's a couple plays that he had at the line of scrimmage where the shiftiness looked like it was there. He was an asset in the passing game. Like, that's the exact type of weapon that this team needs, where they want to run the ball, but they value versatile playmakers. Makes all the sense in the world. Can he stay healthy? That's the big question. The other side, the Falcons, completely unimpressive, but I think you got to give them a little bit of time too. There is, people talk about Rodgers and how is he going to come back at his age from that injury. Cousins isn't a whole lot younger, so it might never come. They kind of called the game like they had a quarterback who was aging and was coming off of major injury, so no surprise there. Didn't push the ball downfield at all. Maybe they try to do that here. I wouldn't feel great about it, but I guess I'd probably lean the under here, under 47.5, because I think this Falcons offense is going to have some rust to kick off. Is it even rust if the quarterback wasn't there last year? I don't.
I'd say
I don't even totally understand how rust
variety.
works. So.
ESPN's Ben Solak said that Cousins. This is a next gen stat. Cousins moved an average of 3.1 yards per dropback versus Pittsburgh. In other words, he was just.
That feels pretty stationary.
He's like the electric football quarterback who just got like the arm up.
Yeah.
And he just all the guys are running around the field. That game sucks, by the way.
That's probably the best way to describe that offense over the last 5 or 6 years. So that makes sense. The
loudest game ever.
It is. It's the worst game ever. I got it for Christmas one year. It's like you got this little felt football. It doesn't even make sense.
How do you throw the ball? Like you just flick the guy's arm back, right?
Oh man, what a brutal! People had it so bad back in the day.
What a brutal game.
Yeah. So.
All right.
You want to go play electric football?
Yeah, I'm definitely eBaying it when we get back to our desk.
All right, that's Ricky. I'm Mike. This is The Spread. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you again next week. Goodbye.